Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Naruto Had Mastered of Hokage and Naruto X FemKyuubi. So do 4 blue hearts. Comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Naruto X Rias and Akino uncensored spicy version, link in description. Sakura-chan, will you go out with me? Naruto, get out of my life. The pink-haired girl shouted loudly. Why don't you understand that everyone hates you? You're just lowering my chances of getting a date with Sasuke-kun. Why don't you kill yourself and do everyone a favor? It's not like anyone loves you, and if you're not around, Sasuke-kun would only have to save me when we're in danger, rather than you as well. A dreamy look appeared in her eyes. Did you see the love in his eyes when he defeated that Haku person? He didn't want anyone to hurt me. Naruto looked into the distance, thinking over what Sakura had said. He recalled a conversation with the Hokage. Gigi, do you have a wife? Yes Naruto, why do you ask? I want to marry Sakura-chan. I love her, but she doesn't love me. Are you sure you love her Naruto? The old twinkled down at him. Love is something very complicated. Something much different from attraction. I think you were lonely, and saw Sakura being bullied. And thought she was like you, but really she has no idea of the hardship you've been through. When the time comes, look deep inside yourself, and ask yourself if you really love her. Naruto looked confused for a second, then smiled up at the old man. Thank you Hokage-sama, I'm sure I'll understand someday. You will. Now I've got work to do. Kage Bushins can't do all the work themselves, you know. He grinned, motioning to the 3 identical copies of him at a desk by his side doing some paperwork. I've got to meet representatives from Rain Country about the upcoming Chunin exams. Why don't you have yourself some ramen? He pulled out some ramen vouchers from his desk, and passed them to the young boy, chuckling at the ecstatic look the young boy was giving him. If you ever need anything, I'm always here for you Naruto. Thank you Gigi, you're the best. He yelled over his shoulder as he ran from the room, clenching the ramen vouchering firmly in his fist. I understand Gigi, Naruto murmured to himself. What are you on about, idiot? Are you going to leave me alone or not? Yeah, he murmured subconsciously, trying to think of a time Sakura had been nice to him. He couldn't. I'll leave you alone, pink-haired bitch. He muttered the last part, obviously not quietly enough though, as he saw a fist come out of nowhere, forcing him to quickly dodge. Good. Now I'm going to find Sasuke-kun. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully finding Sasuke was more important than a punch on the head for him. What do you want me for? Both of them jumped in surprise, looked up, and saw Sasuke standing in a tree above them. Sasuke-kun, will you go out with me? Sakura yelled. Listen to yourself. You're worse than Naruto. I'm going to train. Do you want to come Naruto? Naruto grinned up at his rival. Can have you getting ahead of me, can I? And followed the black-haired teen out of the park, and to the nearest training ground, flicking Sakura off as he went. They spared Sasuke, winning as usual by using an advanced fire jutsu Kakashi had taught him to take out Naruto's clone army, and using his Sharingan and superior speed and taijutsu skill. LS beat him around a bit before smashing him into the ground. They sat down in the clearing after Naruto had woken up, and ate the small lunch Sasuke had brought with him. You should learn more jutsus Naruto. We would be more evenly matched if you could do something more than just Kage Bushin. I can't, no one will teach me. Kakashi-sensei says I need to work on my chakra control before I can learn anything. Even though I practice for 2 hours every day, and Gigi says I'm as good as some Chunin. I've already mastered the water walking exercise, which even Sakura can't do. I'm not allowed in the library because the old man there won't let me in, and they have a henge detector at the entrance, so I can't sneak in, so I only know the academy styles and jutsu, and Kage Bushin, which I learnt from the secret scroll. Naruto suddenly realized what he had said, and glanced at Sasuke. His teammate was looking at him curiously, but didn't ask anything. He just stood up, and looked at Naruto. I'll teach you something. What? I'll teach you a jutsu, and you can have some of the family fighting style scrolls that I've used. He made the best attempt he could make at a smile, which turned into a twisted sort of smirk. But luckily Naruto managed to interpret it as friendly. Why would you do that? For some reason no one will teach you, and when you run away, you need to be able to look after yourself. Or you'll die within minutes, and we'll never be able to have a rematch. What do you mean? I'm not running anywhere. You will. I've seen how the villagers, and most of the shinobi look at you. In the end it will get to you. I'm going to leave here too, soon as the right time comes. But, if I were you I'd leave. Take this special scroll of yours, and leave. There's plenty of jobs out there for missing nins, and not all of them involve killing people, and plenty of people out there to train you. What do you have to lose? Hokage Gigi. If he cared about you, why didn't he adopt you? Now here's the basic Uchiha stance, and a low-level fire technique. Once you've proved you're not a dobi and can learn by yourself, come back to me, and I'll show you something that will help you when I leave. Sasuke said, then jumped off into the trees, too fast for Naruto to stop him. Why would he do this for me? We've always been rivals. What does he get out of it? Naruto thought as he slowly climbed to his feet, and set off out of the training ground. 1 week later, Naruto emerged from the forest to see Sasuke sitting in the exact same spot as 1 week ago. He sat down next to him, and passed him the scrolls. Sasuke looked up, a gleam in his eye. Let's fight. Naruto grinned, and got into the most advanced stance on the scroll. I've been busy. Sasuke ignored him, and sent a string of punches at Naruto's chest. He dodged them all but the last one, which he ducked, and punched up, catching Sasuke in the chin, sending him flying 20 feet back. You've improved. He sat up, and spat out some blood. But is it enough? Jumping to his feet, he did a series of hand seals, and breathed out a huge tongue of flame. Naruto had just enough time to jump up into the air to avoid the fire, but was caught with an elbow from behind. Sasuke grinned in victory, but it was quickly replaced with shock when Naruto disappeared in a cloud of white smoke. Kunai clashed, as Sasuke managed to parry Naruto's surprise attack from behind his back. Not being able to hold him off for long, Sasuke flipped back, and flashed through another set of hand seals, creating a long rope, which spread round the blonde, but Naruto clumsily made a series of hand seals just in time, firing a set of mini fireballs from his mouth, burning the rope to a crisp. The two continued to fight using taijutsu, with the occasional fire jutsu, till one of Naruto's clones tripped over into the real Naruto, causing him to lose his concentration, and not be able to finish the set of hand seals he was trying to complete in times to meet Sasuke's similar fire jutsu. He collapsed to the ground, and waved off Sasuke, who came hurrying over to see if he was alright. You should get to the hospital. Those burns look bad. Naruto chuckled dryly. I've had worse than this. I have enhanced healing, so I should be better again in about 10 minutes. Nodding, Sasuke motioned for Naruto to follow him. I'm leaving tomorrow. And I need your help. What? Where are you going? Why do you need me? Naruto spluttered, hurrying to catch up with him. I'm the last Uchiha, and people treat me like royalty. They shouldn't. My father was evil. He was trying to gain power to overthrow the Hokage. He wanted power, and wasn't afraid to kill innocent people to get it. However, people ignored that because they needed the Uchiha for the safety of the village. I lied when I said I wanted to kill Itachi. I had to, because I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to. Itachi is working for the Hokage undercover in a secret organization called Akatsuki. My father found out Itachi was working for the Hokage, and tries to kill him. Naruto could see tears in Sasuke's eyes. Itachi had to kill all the Uchiha under the Hokage's orders, and because they attacked him, but he left me alive. I'm leaving because this village think I'm the answer to their problems, and I'm not. Because I need to find out why Itachi left me alive, yet killed my mother. She hated my father, and his schemes, and would often get beaten by him. I need to find out why he killed her. But, why are you telling me this? Naruto asked nervously. He could see the anger and emotion in Sasuke's face. You know, I mentioned Itachi working undercover in an organization called Akatsuki. Naruto nodded. Their objective is to capture all the tailed beasts. 1 through 9. 12 years ago, the nine-tailed fox attacked this village. All the villagers hate and fear you. The Hokage mentioned your name when he was talking to Itachi. It all fits together. Oh, I thought you might want to know there are a group of S-class missing nins out to get you and the other tailed beasts. Also in case I die. Can you find Itachi? And kill whoever was responsible for my mother's death. I promise. Naruto said sincerely, and Sasuke nodded his thanks. Now here we are. Sasuke motioned in front of him. Naruto looked around, and realized he hadn't been looking where he was going. He figured he must be under the Uchiha district somewhere. They were in a dark solid-looking room, with the only light coming from a bare light bulb above them. The room had a pile of boxes in one corner, and shelf of scrolls, with a few racks of weapons along another wall. In the far corner Naruto noticed a fun, Y-shaped object covered in a moth-eaten dust blanket. This is the Uchiha storeroom. All important objects and weapons used to go in here. Itachi took some of the useful stuff when he left, I think. Weaver, you can have what you want out of here to help you. Naruto spent a few minutes looking through the scrolls, detailing some more advanced Uchiha techniques, and a few of the smaller weapons he found in one of the boxes. What's this? He asked, motioning to the odd object in the corner. Sasuke walked over and dragged the blanket off the object to reveal a bent-over human form. Naruto cautiously walked over, and peered intently at it. It was a lady, just tall with long black hair, but the skin was different, dead and dried up. Sasuke lifted it up, and Naruto staggered back as bright red eyes stared back at him. She's my aunt, Kimiko. Sasuke said grimly, my mother's sister. She too didn't agree with my father, and disappeared when I was 6. Apparently she was found by some Anbu working undercover in Suna. They managed to sneak her and everything they found with her out of Suna, and gave it all to the Uchiha, out of fear of what might happen if someone found out they didn't. People had a habit of disappearing when they crossed my family back then. There are some books too. Sasuke continued, holding out a pile of books Naruto hadn't seen. They don't tell you much of the art. Just a journal of some crazy shinobi, I think. But what is she? Naruto said, ignoring what Sasuke was saying, and looking at the object in horror. A puppet of some sort, but not like the normal sort that some people in Suna use. There's an old legend that details a technique that can be used to bring dead humans to life. Apparently someone out there can still use it, and made this. But if the instructions are here, why doesn't someone use it? The Uchiha, Sasuke sighed, are lazy, very lazy, and this puppet thingy takes a lot more work than copying other people's techniques. However, without training, you can't master a technique. This is why Itachi was strong enough to kill them all. He would train so often we hardly talked to each other. Oh, and they were very arrogant, thinking the techniques weren't strong enough to bother with. If you want it, you can have it all. I don't know much about puppets, but I think you'll probably have to know a bit about our style to use this puppet. So you can use the scrolls in the corner. I've finished with them all. But why don't you use it? Think Dobi. Why would I want to fight with an Uchiha when I am one myself? It wouldn't suit my style. And I'm going to be traveling too much to deal with all this. Why don't you focus on the scrolls over there? There are some pretty powerful techniques, and you can take them all. I've got copies. Maybe. Thanks Sasuke, this is awesome. I'm going to become the world's greatest ninja. Naruto shouted loudly, waving his hands in the air, ignoring the half-scornful, half-annoyed look Sasuke was giving him. You said you needed my help. What was it, and is there anything else I can do? Yeah. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm packed everything, and made a spare key to this room, so only you and me can access it. You're going to have to be careful when you visit, as this area will probably be searched when I leave. Won't they be able to break in? Impossible, too many secrecy jutsus. The only reason you can even see his room is because I have a key and brought you here, and now you have a key. Sasuke said, passing a large dull gray key over to Naruto, who carefully placed it in a pocket. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm going to leave tonight at about 12 when the guard changes. I need you to make a distraction at around 1 in the afternoon of the next day, when we're supposed to be having team training. He said, emphasizing the fact that team training meant Sasuke training, which Sakura watched, while Naruto was ignored. That is the earliest people will start to miss me, and I need more time to get clear. It has to last long enough to give me a good 24-hour head start, as hunter nins will be much faster than me, and I'll be setting up traps and diversions as I go. You have to get team training cancelled, and distract Sakura somehow. Maybe some sort of prank, something perverted that will get Kakashi's attention. Naruto reached forward in shock and punched Sasuke in the arm. What was that for? Checking for henge, you told me to do something perverted. That's just so, un-Sasuke-like. Naruto said in a daze. Sasuke returned the punch. Yeah, I think I've got an idea. Should last most of the day, and will defiantly keep Kakashi occupied. Naruto grinned evilly. I think Konoha's perverts are going to get a wake-up call tomorrow. I think Konoha's perverts are going to get a wake-up call tomorrow. Good. Now there is one more thing. Sasuke said, looking at the ground uncomfortably. What is it? Naruto asked quickly, leaving his imagination to run wild on its own. Well, I was wondering if you'd teach me the Kage Bushin. What's wrong? Of course I will, after giving me all this stuff. Well, I thought it might be a special family jutsu, or something, seeing as it's the only jutsu you seem to know. No, I learned it from a secret village scroll I stole off the Hokage ages ago. You won't be able to make as many as me, because I have more chakra. Naruto suddenly remembered Sasuke knew his secret. I mean because of the Kyuubi, but the old man told me the really cool thing about Kage Bushin is that whatever the clone learns, you learn. So you can use them as scouts and reading really boring stuff, so you know it, but don't have to endure hours of boredom. The old man uses it for paperwork all the time. Naruto ran through the seals and how the technique worked while Sasuke watched, trying to hide his excitement that obviously came whenever he learned a high-rank jutsu, behind his cool facade. Finally he was able to make 2 clones appear. And just to show him why he was master of the technique, Naruto made 100. Next day, Hokage, come quick, enemy shinobi. A masked ambush shouted, running into the Hokage's room to see the old man wearing his battle gear, and looking grim. I know, I've just noticed them. I don't know how they managed to slip an army that big past all the guards. How many are there, Hokage-sama? Probably about 50. Now go and get every available shinobi we have, quick. The Anbu promptly jumped out of the window, and the Hokage followed suit, heading in the opposite direction towards the village gate. Hokage-sama, we don't know what they're doing, they've stopped moving, just stand there watching us. Should we attack? The Hokage was just about to answer when he felt someone tap him on the shoulder. Turning round, he was faced with a young blonde-haired girl, wearing nothing, with tiny puffs of smoke covering all the important areas. The Hokage stood there for a few seconds. A small stream of blood trickling down his nose, before he finally registered what he was seeing and flew backwards, blood streaming from his nose. The rest of the Konoha forces spun round immediately to find out what had sent their great leader flying. All of them were dispatched in a similar fashion, apart from about 15 fuming kunoichi who glared first at the group of nearly naked girls in front of them. And then at the heap of perverts lying in a pool of their own blood a little way off. After a brief moment of indecision, where the female ninjas alternated between casting angry looks at the girls and disgusted looks at the men, and even a few jealous glances at the super curvy bodies in front of them, Kurenai, coming to her senses, realized she was the most experienced person there. You 5. Go and see if the men are okay, and find out who those enemy nin are. She said, glaring scornfully at the men of the village, her sometimes Datasuma lying unconscious on top of the pile. The rest of us will investigate this, she said, waving a hand behind her. She turned round to find that 10 or so young girls had vanished. Catch them alive, she added, noticing that a few other boyfriends lay among the perverts. Naruto grinned as he noticed the guard that was usually stationed at the entrance to the Uchiha grounds listened intently into his earpiece, then vanished in a shunshin. He could have jumped over the wall as the guard was mainly there to keep nosy citizens out of the deserted district, however he wanted to know how his plan had gone so far. Obviously successful, as he noticed another 2 nins jumping along the rooftops above him, in too much of a hurry to notice the orange-clad genin walk into the Uchiha training hall. He quickly found the key in his pocket, and inserted it into the odd-shaped crack in the wall. A door appeared when he turned the key, and Naruto eagerly entered the hidden room. Glancing round him eagerly, Naruto found his eyes lingering on the object. He knew to be a human puppet, lying in the corner. He knew nothing about the art, apart from what Sasuke had told him, which wasn't much, but for some reason he bent down and picked up the book he'd been shown yesterday. Feeling a bit stupid for ignoring the dangerous techniques in the scrolls, and the different lethal-looking weapons, he flicked open the first page, and read. I'm leaving this village, and hope that someday another will rise with the power and mastery over the puppetry techniques to challenge me to a proper fight. If they win, I will grant them my prized possession, the good luck. The last few words appeared to have been blurred, although Naruto couldn't see that the book had been damaged in any way. That was all there was. Naruto frowned, and flicked to the next page. It gave in rather brief details the ability to make chakra strings to control puppets. Naruto could see it would need a lot of work, and turned the page to find the next blank. Quickly he flicked through the rest of the book, only to reveal empty pages. Naruto huffed in annoyance, and threw the book at the puppet. He got up, and walked over to the shelf of scrolls, picking the first, and read. It gave him an in-depth description of what the Sharingan did, and how it was used, but nothing of any use to the blonde Jinchuriki. He tried the next one, and was rewarded with a list of jutsus and genjutsus that were usually taught to Uchiha that developed their Sharingan late, as they all didn't require the bloodline to complete. Naruto counted 10 in total, including the 3 fire jutsus he'd already learnt, Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, Great Fireball Technique, Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu, Art of the Phoenix, which created numerous small fireballs, in which shurikens can be hidden. The third technique he'd learnt was called Kaden, Anaboko Kanem, Flame Pit, which created as its name suggested, and large pit with flames at the bottom. Naruto could only manage to make a small version of the technique so far, about the size of a bathtub. However, it said on the scroll Sasuke had originally given him that it took time to channel the chakra required through his hands. However, when you had the technique down, you could make the pit as big as needed depending on how much chakra you put into the technique. Sasuke had said something about the technique being similar to one the Toad Sennin used. But Naruto had never bothered to pay too much attention in history class, so wasn't exactly sure who this Sennin or what his technique was, but his looked cool, and he was starting to get curious as to what would happen if someone was to fall in. The pit went down 20 meters, with vertical sides, and some very hot-looking flames at the bottom. As Naruto didn't know any genjutsu, he decided to delay learning the 4 listed, leaving 3 others. The first created a blue fire, which was infused with the user's chakra, and continued burning for a few minutes. The advantages were it could be used to trap the enemy, it could burn through a lot more objects, including the ground, and it did a lot more damage to those it hit in combat. The second make the fire form into a whip, which could be used to block weapons, or capture somebody, although the technique was quite dangerous to use when fighting alone as the user was not able to move, or focus on defending themselves very well. The third technique created 8 rings of fire around the user, in a pattern, so that they were completely surrounded. This couldn't block many jutsu, and didn't let the use art cast many jutsu apart from other fire ones, however it protected them from handheld weapons, and taijutsu using opponents as the enemy wouldn't be able to get close enough to hit him. Naruto so figured it would give him a good chance to escape or move to a new place on the battlefield if he needed to for whatever reason. Naruto pocketed the scroll, and without thinking about it, picked up the Up-it book that had knocked away the covering when he had thrown it, revealing the empty face of Sasuke's aunt. Shuddering at the cold emotionless eyes, he walked to the door, and locked it, breathing an involuntary sigh of relief. There was something about that puppet that seemed real, alive. Dismissing the though, Naruto made a shadow clone, who hanged into Sasuke, and the two set off down the road together. The Hokage had woken up about a quarter of an hour after his embarrassing takedown, and slowly climbed to his feet, feeling a bit lightheaded due to the blood loss. Hokage-sama, are you alright? The Hokage recognized the voice of a young Chunin, and looked around him. There was blood everywhere, and he seemed to be sitting on an Anbu member, his mask a dirty red color, making him look more than just a bit scary. What happened? He asked, is anyone hurt? We don't know, sir, everyone here's fine, and the ninja who we thought were attacking were just bushin'. You and the other men got a bit distracted, and made a foe, passed out, she said, trying to keep her righteous anger in check, while remaining polite and professional in the company of the village leader. Oh yeah, the Hokage murmured in shame. Before realizing something, the only person he'd ever seen with a chest that large was Tsunade, and he'd seen at least 3 with this distinct feature. Most had blonde hair, and looked remarkably similar to a certain prankster, Naruto. On the other side of Konoha, said blonde prankster raised his head, and looked around at the villagers who were all looking at him in confusion and the ever-present anger. That must be a record, he said to Sasuke, ignoring the others that were staring at them as they walked along Konoha's main street. My personal best is him being knocked out for 45 minutes, but he's been only 20 before. It must have been only about 15 this time. I hope he isn't becoming immune to my ladylike charm. Sasuke merely grunted, trying to keep up his normal indifference, but Naruto noticed the clone snigger to itself as he pretended to cough. We'd better hurry if we're going to get to team training, Naruto. We're supposed to be fighting Kakashi-sensei today, and I've been practicing a new move that will help me get my revenge. Sasuke drawled. Naruto noticed the interest they were receiving from those around them, including the proud smile directed at the black-haired Avenger from an old lady running a store across the street when he mentioned his revenge on Itachi. He smirked, mission complete. All he had to do now was put Kakashi out of action, and then have some fun with the rest of the village. The two arrived exactly at around 2 o'clock to find a fuming Sakura. You were supposed to be here 3 hours ago. She yelled at her teammates, and was about to punch Naruto in the head when Sasuke glared at her. Do you think it's going to help us against Kakashi if you injure Naruto before he's even got here? Sakura mumbled something, and sat down with her back against the bridge, where they often met their sensei. Naruto nudged Sasuke, and pointed down the road, where Kakashi was walking. Just then a black cat ran out of an alley, and dashed in front of Kakashi. He grinned, right on time. The silver-haired Jonin's eye smiled at his team, when he finally arrived. Are you ready? Be to come at me with the intent to kill or… sensei. Didn't you just see that black cat? Naruto interrupted. What? You always run around the village to remove the bad luck of seeing a black cat. Why is it any different this time, unless you've been lying all this time? Sakura looked up in interest. She was getting just a bit annoyed at their sensei's continuous late appearances. Akashi grinned sheepishly behind his face mask, and scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, I was just getting round to that. Before we have our little fight, we're going to all go for a little jog around the village to warm up. Nani? Sakura yelled at Naruto, look where your showing off got us. Now I have to get all sweaty and dirty running around the village. In the sentence, let's have a fight tomorrow to test your improvement. How do you define the word fight? Naruto said sarcastically. It's going to get a lot worse than a little running. The group set off, Naruto leading the way, followed by a sulking Sakura. As mute-hanged clone, and a lazy Jonin wishing he had brought his Ika Paradise book with him, and he didn't have such an annoying team. They were halfway round the village when Naruto reached into his pocket unnoticed, and dropped a small paper-backed book onto the floor. Chuckling to himself, he continued on for a bit, then when he'd traveled far enough, stopped and turned round expectantly. One of his clones had raided the Hokage's office while he'd been knocked out, and picked up that little beauty. Not that he was interested in the perverted little thing. But it appeared someone else was. Ika. Kakashi thought to himself, and bent to pick the little book up. He almost dropped it in surprise, when he read the title. This isn't supposed to be released until next month. Opening up the front cover, he almost fainted. Signed by the author. Kakashi-sensei, are you alright? Sakura asked. Kakashi shook his head, any thoughts he had of reading it immediately smashed. Yeah, he sighed. Let's go. They completed the lap, and Kakashi was just about to start talking about their test when. Sensei. Is that the most recent Ika book? Sasuke asked. Why? Kakashi asked, subconsciously holding the book behind his back a little tighter. I've started to read some of them, and thought, maybe if it was the most recent edition we should skip this training. And you should read that book. I bet you want to know what happens. I heard that. Stop. Kakashi almost yelled, ignoring the fact that Sasuke was about 11, and was apparently reading smut. Sasuke has a point. Let's have this training session tomorrow, so get some training done for the rest of today, and Sasuke. Yeah, if you ever want to borrow one of my books. I have all of them. With duplicates. Naruto spent the rest of the day on the Hokage mountain, alternating between training with the techniques from earlier, and watching as his army of female clones terrorized the streets of Konoha. Sending the men flying with females in hot pursuit waving their rolling pins or kunai at the clones. So you had no idea that he was a fake then? The Hokage said grimly, his hands interlaced resting on the desk in front of him. No, although he did seem to be slightly more friendly than usual. Okay Naruto, you can go. Thanks old man, who's going to be on our team now? Can we go and look for Sasuke? I'm sure he had a good reason for leaving. We'll see Naruto, now get out of here, I need to have a meeting. The Hokage sighed, and massaged his temples. Once Naruto had left the room, he spoke again. What did you think? Kakashi suddenly appeared out of his disguise in one corner of the room, along with the two elders, the Hokage's old teammates. Well, it could all be a coincidence. Maybe Sasuke used Naruto's prank as a distraction to get away, or if he did defect or get captured by Orochimaru, or another missing nin as you fear, then maybe they were the one to make the clone. We don't actually know when he even left, although I think he was acting funny when I met my team, 3 days ago. That would be the day. The Hokage blushed slightly. That Naruto did the prank. Kakashi completed, his smirk luckily hidden by the face mask. Just out of curiosity, how were you able to resist Naruto's jutsu, especially with your, hobbies? I didn't notice anything. I was too busy reading my new book. You still haven't returned that The Hokage said, before blushing again under the intense gaze of his old teammates. Anyway, I think we don't have enough evidence to either convict Naruto, or declare him innocent. I'll make sure a team of Anbu keep an eye on him for a while, but other than that, you're to continue as normal Kakashi. Who is going to be our new team member then? The copy nin asked. A person called Sai. He's been closely linked with root activity before, so make sure to keep a close eye on him. Follow him home sometimes. I want to know what he's reporting, and to who. This is the chance we need to get the evidence on Danzo. Konoha won't be safe till we've removed that old warmongering idiot from this village. And hopefully from this world. Kakashi seemed a bit shocked at the Hokage's anger when it came to that particular subject, but didn't show it. Hi Hokage-sama, he murmured, and was just about to leave when Koharu reached out a hand and tapped him on the shoulder. We're not finished yet, Hitaki-san. We've been talking with the council, and have come to a different conclusion. Koharu, what are you doing? My word is law, and you'd do well to remember that. The third shouted, getting up from the chair he'd been sat in. Not when the advisors, the shinobi and civilian council all go against you. Plus we have backing from the Fire Country daimyo, so Sarutobi my friend, you're going to have to sit this one out. This is about the Kyuubi, isn't it? He shouted furiously. Why can't you see Naruto as a different person? He's only a container. Must the world be full of ignorant people like you? This is nothing personal Sarutobi, but the villagers demand protection. It is our duty as shinobi. And as counselors to keep Konoha safe, and if we have to go behind your back to achieve that, then so be it. She motioned for Homura to continue. Uzumaki Naruto will not be continuing as a ninja. He said gruffly, and held up a hand to stall the protests that Kakashi and the third were about to make. That is, he will not become a good shinobi. From now on, he will complete simple D-ranked missions on his own without a team, and will never surpass the rank of genin. Sakura will join 2 other shinobi, who have recently been moved into the top class in the academy due to their ability. And will be finishing at the end of this year. But without the Uchiha, what's the point in me taking the team? Kakashi muttered, saying the first thing that came to his head. Are you not renowned for knowing over 1,000 techniques? You're one of Konoha's best jonin. Also the 2 new members will be quite special. I hear that the current Hyuga heir is not living up to expectations. So it is likely that soon she will become a branch house member, leaving her sister Hanabi to take the position. She is on course for becoming the rookie of her class. The other is Konohamaru, the third's grandson. And no doubt one day the future Hokage. Both have been privately tutored, so are up to graduating level. He turned round, and looked Kakashi in the eye. I hear that Sakura is an intelligent girl. And has the chakra control required to become a Medi Nin. I suggest you start to get her some training in this, as you will be going on lots of advanced missions, and a me. Dick in the team would probably be useful. I want this team ready to show off to the world by the Chunin exam after next. We need to show the other shinobi nations our strength. But Kakashi tried to protest, but was quickly cut short by Kaharu. This group will become more famous than the legendary Sannin. You are being put in charge of their training because we trust you. She tried to smile sweetly at Kakashi, but it turned into more of a leer. Besides, we aren't asking you, this is an order. If you don't do as you're told, and train these genin to the best of your ability, then. She trailed off. We don't let traitors go free anymore, do we, Sarutobi? Hokage hung his head in shame. They had never let him forget him letting Orochimaru go free. He felt helpless. How could his old teammates go over his head to the council, and even the daimyo? Unfortunately he knew the answer. Naruto had never been treated fairly. He'd been beaten so many times, the old Hokage couldn't remember. No one had ever treated him as a friend aside from the kindly ramen stand owners, who couldn't be there for him all the time as they had to work, and then finally a few months ago, Ruruka had managed to see past the Kyuubi brat identity he village had made for him to the lonely child on the inside. And now, they were shattering his dreams, keeping him as a genin, and having him do chores for the rest of his career. He could only think of one thing at that moment in time. Naruto was not going to like it, and he was not going to be the person to tell him. Sarutobi tried to stop thinking about it, and looked up to see Homura patting Kakashi on the back. You won't regret this, Kakashi. It'll be a privilege to teach a team with so much potential. Remember, training Sakura isn't important. It's normal for Kunoichi to be weaker members of a team, so not much attention will be focused on her. If you can get here to a level where she can heal the other two, and doesn't need protecting, then do so. As long as it doesn't affect the other two's training. We're under a lot of pressure from the Hyugas, and the rest of the village, so make sure you make no mistakes. Kakashi merely nodded glumly. Sarutobi glared at the two of them. You'd sacrifice another's shinobi career, just to further someone else's, and then destroy another's out of fear. We only do what has to be done, Hokage-sama, surely you can see that. Kaharu frowned at the anger in his voice. All right, it appears that you have won this round, my friends. Now I want to make some things clear. While Naruto will remain a genin with no teammate, it still remains my responsibility to give out missions, and I can give him whichever rank I choose. Similarly with the new team Kakashi, I will only give out higher rank missions when I think they are ready, and not before. Konohamaru and Hanabi are still young compared to the other genin, and I will not give them a mission that may risk their lives. And finally, I will call for Naruto now. And you can tell him the good news. I'll be down the road having a drink. If you need me, then don't bother coming. With that, the third walked out the room, putting a henge on himself, and going to the nearest bar to drown himself in sake. Naruto, unaware of what had just happened to his shinobi career, had just collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. He had been fighting against about 10 shadow clones. Only 2 remained standing, for some reason patiently waiting a few meters away. The blonde shuddered as his muscles screamed for him to give up, but he ignored them, gritted his teeth, and slowly climbed to his feet. One clone attacked, drawing a kunai, and swiping at Naruto. Not fast enough to dodge, it nicked his face, drawing blood. Naruto wiped it away, annoyed at himself. This was the first time they'd drawn blood during the fight, and he was getting careless. Jumping back a little way, he drew 2 shuriken, throwing them at both the clones. The both jumped out of the path of the weapons in opposite directions, and the real Naruto chased after the one on the left, throwing 2 more shurikens at it. Both missed narrowly, and he had to adjust his path slightly to avoid getting smashed into the ground by the clone's foot, which had been aimed at the back of his neck. The 2 traded punches and blocks, until the other clone returned, the 2 of them forcing Naruto to retreat again. If there was one thing this fight had taught him, aside from the fact that getting kicked between the legs twice in a row hurt, it was that his taijutsu really sucked. He'd learnt some of the Uchiha moves, but they didn't suit him. He was clumsy when completing a combination of punches and kicks, and no matter how hard he tried he couldn't get the basic stance quite right. Sighing, he supposed he'd ask Kakashi-sensei to help him next time he saw him. Despite never helping before, Naruto hoped that with Sasuke gone, however much he regretted his new friend leaving, it would force Kakashi to focus on training him and Sakura more. Naruto evaded the clones for a few more minutes, until he felt a small amount of chakra return. It just being enough, he waited till both the clones engaged him at once. Blocking a kick, he moved to punch it in the head, but twisted his hand at the last minute, pushing the clone backwards. He rushed through a set of hand seals, and raised his fingers to his mouth, breathing out a string of tiny fireballs. One clone was hit head-on, and disappeared immediately with a puff of smoke, but the other managed to twist his body around the fireballs. Naruto quickly closed in on him, and a knock on the head sorted him out. Naruto grinned, despite the exhaustion he was feeling, and collapsed to the ground. Half an hour later, Naruto was woken suddenly by a sharp pain in his side. Opening his eyes, he saw a Chunin he didn't recognize glaring down at him, and kicking him again for good measure. The Hokage advisors want to see you. Why? I don't know. And don't really care, so shut up you demon brat, and get moving. Naruto returned the look the older nin was giving him, and climbed to his feet, being as slow as possibly to annoy the shinobi. He knew that the man had just broken the Hokage's law, and could probably go to jail if he told the Hokage, but the council would find a way to get him out of it, and he'd simply be accused of lying. He followed the man to the Hokage tower, receiving the customary glares and abuse from the villagers and less tolerant shinobi he passed. When they arrived at the office, the chair the Hokage usually sat in was vacant. Instead, an old man and woman stood to one side of the room, looking out the window. "Where's the old man?" Naruto asked cheerfully as he entered the room. A bit more respect wouldn't go astray. The woman turned round and looked at Naruto with a steel gaze. "Now let me get one thing clear. The Hokage is not here, and we have the backing of the council and the Fire Lord. So we can do whatever we want. Baka, no one's more powerful than the Hokage." Naruto shouted. "At the moment, I'm afraid we are." The old man entered the conversation. "Could you leave us?" he added, addressing the Chunin standing at the door. When he had left, the old man motioned for Naruto to take a seat in front of the desk, and the two sat down in seats on the other side. "What am I here for?" Naruto asked impatiently. "I've got training to do." Koharu smiled humorlessly. "We've got some bad news for you. Due to your potential involvement in Uchiha Sasuke's escape, your obvious lack of shinobi conduct, and other reasons that we can't mention, you will be remaining a genin for the rest of your career." Naruto jumped to his feet, sending the chair skidding across the room behind him. "That's bullshit. You're doing this because of the Kyuubi. I'm not it, it's just sealed inside me, can't anyone see that?" "How do you know about the demon, boy?" he said sharply, ignoring Naruto's outburst. "Mizuki Tem told me about it, but who cares, I'm still a human. Every seal will eventually break, then you'll be a demon, or a human wielding the demon's powers," Homura said, ignoring Naruto's outburst. "Don't you trust the Yondaime? He was the strongest Hokage Konoha had ever had, and you think he'd let the Kyuubi escape? That seal is very advanced. Who knows what could happen? Especially with it being on you. We don't want to take the chance of you using the power on an advanced mission, or another shinobi releasing the beast, so you will only do D-ranked missions. And will not be taught any further techniques as that could trigger the seal. But that's stupid. I don't want the damn fox's power. I've never even known about it till a few months ago, and nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened to me. Hello." Naruto glanced round. "Who's there? I'm sorry for the misery I've caused." The voice continued, in a low melodic voice. "Who is it? Where are you?" Naruto was looking round the room frantically, trying to find where the voice came from. "What are you talking about, kid? There's no one here but us. You'll be doing 2D ranked missions a day, on half pay. As you should be able to complete them easily. You can leave now. I look forward to meeting you, Namikaze Naruto." Naruto sat completely still. What had that voice called him? "We said leave." Koharu shouted at him. Naruto's eyes slowly focused on the two people in front of him. Yeah, well, see y'all later then," he said quietly, his confusion fortunately keeping his temper in check. Naruto walked to his apartment in silence. Where had that voice come from? Why couldn't the old farts hear it? And finally, he was thinking back to Sasuke's words. "In the end it will get to you. If I were you, I'd leave." Funny voices or not, Sasuke was right. He'd had enough of being treated like a demon. Maybe it would be better for everyone if he just left. Then he remembered Sasuke's warning, About the Atsuki or whatever they were called. At least in Konoha the Hokage would protect him. Would he? He hadn't been there this afternoon, hadn't done anything about him being a genin for the rest of his life. Naruto sighed, and tried to stop thinking about it, it just made his head hurt. He arrived at the apartment, quickly prepared and ate some instant ramen, then lay down on the thin mat. He'd managed to salvage from the village dump, and shut his eyes. He shivered slightly, it had suddenly gotten very cold. He felt something on his back, a few seconds later identifying it as water. He jumped to his feet. All sense tiredness seemed to have completely left. Looking around, he found himself in what appeared to be a giant sewer, a few inches of water that he'd been lying in covered the floor. The walls glowing with a strange orange light. Naruto looked around him in surprise, how did he get here? There was only one way to go, so Naruto took it cautiously. The passage turned a few corners. Before Naruto found himself in a giant room, about the size of the whole apartment block he lived in. 3 of the walls were stone, with a strange orange-tinted liquid seeping through the gaps in the brickwork. And down to the floor, which was already covered in the stuff. The 4th consisted of a huge rusted iron bar gate, reaching all the way up to the ceiling. I wonder what's inside, Naruto thought, getting a bit excited, despite knowing he should be more scared. The bars were wider than Naruto and the gaps between twice as big. He wasn't disappointed when a set of huge red eyes appeared behind the bars. About 50 feet up in the air, Naruto managed to hold himself from making a noise, but couldn't help stepping back a few paces. Who are you? He managed to stutter out, looking at his feet to avoid the piercing red eyes. A friend, Naruto gasped, that voice. This is what had been taking to him. Plucking up his courage, he asked another question. Where are we? A high melodic laugh filled the room. And Naruto looked up to see a face to go with the red eyes had come into the light. The giant red fox smiled, baring its teeth. Afraid are we? No, Naruto said defiantly, suddenly realizing something in his mind. You're the Kyuubi. Oh, I'm famous. Yes, my loyal subject, I am the great Kyuubi Kitsune, Lord of the Foxes, and the tailed beasts, most powerful being on the planet. You're a girl, Naruto blurted out fairly incredulously. What gave it away? She asked mockingly. I washed all my makeup off yesterday, even forgot to comb my hair. Oh, I know, maybe it was my voice. Anyway, what's wrong with me being a girl? Nothing, it's just, all the stories. I assumed. Naturally, even the Romans thought I was a male. What? That's millions of years ago. Naruto said in astonishment, recalling a particularly boring lecture of Iruka's, something about an old world with flying machines bigger than houses, and little boxes with flashing lights, but he'd ignored most of that. Even thought it was slightly more interesting than what colored robes the different cages wore. Only joking, I'm not that old. She said lightly. So where are we again? Oh yeah, sorry I forgot. We're inside your mind. What? Naruto exclaimed. Your head, your body, whatever you want to call it. This is where the Yondaime put me. Those are the seals right there. She pointed to the middle of the bars where a small scrap of paper was, reading, seal. That's the only thing that's keeping me from escaping. Why can't you remove it? Naruto asked, looking first at the huge Kyuubi in the cage, then at the tiny seal. The fox giggled. You don't think I've tried? No, I can't move anything but chakra through these bars, and when I do, it automatically becomes yours to control. Also, if it were removed, then you'd probably be killed as an after effect of me being released, and I'd die, as my soul would still be linked to yours. You don't seem to mind all this. You're basically in prison. Yep, I've had 11 years to brood, so now I get someone to talk to, I'm all excited. Fortunately it hasn't been all doom and gloom down here. The seal grants me a fascinating insight into your thoughts, however I can only see things you're focusing on enough to visualize. What? You can see what I'm thinking. Naruto blushed as a sudden thought appeared in his head. The Kyuubi started giggling. Gosh Naruto, I never knew you thought that way about that Sasuke-kun. Hey, I didn't mean any of that. I didn't enjoy that kiss with Sasuke, honest, I was just thinking that if I was gay. Naruto had turned bright red, and tried to ignore the giant fox's laugh. Anyway, down to business, this is the first time I've been able to contact you, due to the Continuous weakening of the seal over time that will naturally occur. This will cause a few side effects like more of my chakra will become available to you, and slowly get converted into your chakra, you'll change appearance slightly. And eventually, you'll be free of the tricks that the seal plays on your mind, making you more likely to get angry, and encouraging you to use my powers. Finally the seal will reach a point, and will start to draw on your chakra. This will remove the chance of you turning into a mini-me if you got really angry. Luckily this hasn't happened yet, but if you take much more of my chakra than when you fought Mizuki, then I suspect something like this may happen. Also your chakra reserves will increase more over time, and as my reserves constantly grow, your strength will never stop until you die. As my chakra will no longer have to pass through the yondaimes, instead yours, it will be more freely available to you, and more will be converted. You getting all this? Naruto grinned sheepishly, and scratched the back of his head. The huge fox groaned. A seal needs a constant flow of chakra to work. When your seal stops drawing on the yondaimes, it will start to draw a tiny amount on your reserves, not that you'll notice, which will mean your reserves will increase, as more will be able to pass through the seal, however you'll look a bit more foxy. And you won't be able to draw on my power as much. Okay, so when's this going to happen, and how do I get out of here? Won't I wake up soon? You should start to feel the change over the next few years. I'm not sure when the process will be finished. Time inside your head is slightly different. Your sleep is split up into different sections, one of which is called the REM sleep. This is when all dreams occur. So this is when your brain is most active, and I can speak to you easiest. So I'm dreaming. No. I took you out of your dream and brought you here to talk to me. If you want to leave, then just go to sleep. When you get tired in here, it shows your time is up, and you're either waking up, or the next stage of the sleep cycle is happening. This will happen 2 or 3 times a night. But I let you sleep through the first 2. I believe you've just been having a rather exciting game of kiss chase with Sasuke-kun. I'm afraid we didn't get to see the end as I wanted to talk to you. Shame, he had just cornered you. And was reaching out too. I was not. Yes you were, she giggled, which didn't quite suit the giant fox, and continued. I can prove it to you if you like, go back to sleep, and… Wait a minute. Despite me not wanting to see myself getting raped by Sasuke, how can you see my dreams? Easy, I'm in your head remember, so can see things you're focusing on. Luke, Killy there's nothing else to occupy your attention but the dream, so I sit in on them every now and then. Luckily the, Sakura-chan, dreams have dried up recently. If I saw that cow hit you one more time, I'd break out of the seal and kill her if it cost me my life. She spat out the name of Naruto's ex-crush with particular venom, causing Naruto to raise his eyebrows, but he decided not to mention anything. So what do you want to talk to me about apart from this complicated seal thingy, Kyuubi-san? Your training, yay, is crap. Doh. You've gotten better, but you still spend far too much time eating ramen. You're getting fat, you only know a few fire jutsus, which aren't suited to you, and you have absolutely no taijutsu or kenjutsu style or ability at the moment, not to mention genjutsu. What? I'm not that bad. I can use the Uchiha stance quite well, and I beat all those clones. I don't need a sword, and genjutsu's for wussies. Naruto felt a sudden wave of chakra wash over him, sending him flying backwards into the floor, knocking the wind out of him. He looked up to see an annoyed fox, nine-tailed waving, and snarling down at the blonde. Genjutsu is not for wussies. Back when I was alive, and not stuck in some tubby homosexual's body, my speciality was genjutsu. I could make people die from their own screaming, I would turn that pathetic Sharingan inside out, literally. I'd make people drown in their own tears and… Small interruption, is that even possible? Not trying to be rude, but when I cry, I don't think there would be enough to drown in, seeing the evil glare the fox was giving him. Naruto cringed a bit, and lay back down again. Guess I'll just shut up Probably a clever thing to do, and yes it is possible, one day I'll prove it to you, if I ever get out of this place. But I'm hopeless at genjutsu, I'll never be able to use it, so what's the point? You need to learn how to detect it, and how to cancel it. Similarly, there's one of He's 7 swordsman of the mist working from Akatsuki, so you'll need to be able to use a sword or some sort of weapon. They're the guys that are after me, how do you know about them? I thought they were really secretive. You don't think I wouldn't know about a bunch of humans wanting to steal my powers? I've known about them for ages, but wasn't worried because I'd have easily killed them all. I guess I got a bit arrogant. And ignored them. Now they're a big threat, and you need to start training to fight them immediately. What do I need to do? Go to that place the Uchiha showed you tomorrow morning, and take the weapons. And whatever else you think might be useful. Then get a few weeks' supply of food, create a clone to leave behind, and find a nice clearing in the forest. I won't be able to speak to you for a while. As it's taking a lot of effort for me to talk to you like this. I'll have to rest for a week at least. It's incredibly difficult to force a connection between the two of us during your sleep. And to be able to summon you here, you know. See you in a few days. And with that, the prison doors, with the giant fox behind them faded out of Naruto's view, and he slipped into uneasy sleep. The next day, he woke up clutching his head in pain. After downing some fruit, a few aspirins and half a gallon of water, he set off towards the other side of town. 20 minutes later Naruto entered the storage room of the deserted clan house, and began sifting through the piles of scrolls and other extraneous items. On the other side of town a white-haired old man, with red marks running down his face, was interrupted from his morning entertainment by a streak of orange shooting into the females section of the hot springs, followed closely by 4 black ones. One quick puff of smoke and a severe beating later, 4 men staggered out of the hot springs clutching a various assortment of extremely painful-looking injuries. The old Sanin grinned, for once in his long and perverted life. He had the pleasure of watching righteous anger, while not being on the receiving end. Minutes later, Naruto was ambling across town, a storage scroll tucked under one arm. He nodded to the 2 gate guards, quickly explaining his need to test out some rather explosive new jutsus, and wandering off into the forest. Just as the 2 guards were finishing their duty, they were confronted by a surprisingly exhausted-looking Anbu unit, and fortunately enough they were able to help. Yes, of course they'd seen Naruto. He'd entered the village a few hours ago, and mentioned he was returning home. In a clearing about 10 miles away from Konoha, Naruto collapsed to the ground in exhaustion, the remains of a partially formed chakra strings fading away from one of his fingers. Pain coursed through his body. As Naruto collapsed to the ground in exhaustion for the 3rd time that day. He'd been working on the chakra string technique for the whole week he'd been living in the clearing. Usually he found it difficult to concentrate on one thing for a short amount of time, but this technique had him hooked. He didn't know why, but 2 hours into his training, when he'd first been able to move a small piece of wood into the air for a few seconds, he'd been enthralled by the technique. He'd been working on it for at least 12 hours each day, spending the rest of his time sleeping, getting food and exercising. One of the Uchiha books he'd brought with him detailed every possible exercise to help increase physical fitness, strength, agility, speed, chakra reserves, and chakra control. Every morning he'd wake up and spend about an hour in total, tree jumping to the nearest village outside Konoha, henging into an ordinary person, buying his supplies for the day, then running home. He'd then spend another hour training his body, then the next hour training his chakra system. He'd already managed to climb to the top of the tree he was practicing on, a huge oak, but as working on his speed climbing the tree, and the length of time he could stand on the underside of one of the branches. Using the book he'd figured out that the reason he hadn't been able to do the simple bunshin at the academy was due to his huge chakra reserves, and as the bunshin required little amounts of chakra, he was unable to do the move. Now all he needed to do was use his chakra control training and modify the amount of chakra he used when doing the jutsu. He had been spending some time increasing his reserves, as even he got tired when he summoned 10 shadow clones to fight against for a long amount of time. And as he was getting better at defeating them every time, he needed to be able to summon more. He would make the 10 clones after his hour of chakra training, and fight till he destroyed them all. Then after a short pause for lunch, practice the chakra string technique. So far he'd managed to get the puppet to move a small amount, however not coordinated, and nowhere near controlled enough. The technique involved manipulating the chakra in the string, so the string would change shape, and move the object. All 10 fingers were needed to control the puppet, however it would take a lot of skill to be able to control all 10 at one time. Once this stage was mastered, fewer fingers could be used, but it would be a lot more difficult to direct. Naruto lay on the ground and watched as a squirrel entered the clearing, and hopped across the ground to within a few meters of where he was lying. Forgetting how tired he was, he cautiously stretched a hand towards the little creature. Quickly making a chakra string on the end of one finger, he extended it to the small creature, then jerked his little finger, and watched as the confused animal flew through the air towards him. He caught the small creature, then released it on the ground grinning to himself. Bully. Kyuubi, where are you? I thought we'd gone through this. She asked disbelievingly. I mean, why aren't we inside my head? How can you talk to me out here? I'm talking to your mind. You can hear me whenever I say anything. The seal's been too strong up till now for anything to get though. This is taking a lot of effort speaking to you like this, so I'll be brief. How many cage bunshin can you make? A couple of hundred I guess, but I can only keep about 20 around for a decent amount of time. Why? I was going to save this till later, but since you're trying that puppet technique, I'll tell you now. When a shadow clone is dispelled, the maker learns exactly what the clone has done. What it's seen, heard, smelled. Whatever. I know that, I've seen the old man Hokage do it loads of times. He says they're copies of him, so they do the paperwork just as good as he would. Yes. But has he explained how to use it for training? Whatever the clone does, you will learn when it's dispelled. That means you get all the clone's knowledge, just not its physical skills. Therefore it would be pointless to get the clones to work out. However, as chakra control relies a lot on the knowledge required to control and bend the will of your chakra, also learning and practicing jutsus. Lots of techniques require trial and improvement for each individual to be able to use them properly. If you do this with your clones, it would take a lot of time and energy. Cool. What else? Naruto asked slightly impatiently, eager to learn more about these new secrets of the techniques. There are other major limitations of the techniques, as the information rush from dispelling a clone can often give headaches. And sometimes do permanent brain damage. Therefore you need to be careful about when you dispel the clones. If the clones have been doing mundane tasks, then the effects of this will know. TB as much than if they'd been reading a book of jutsus, for example, for the same amount of time. So remember to change any clone that's been around for a long time, and start with a new one, or the information will build up. Another neat trick you haven't learnt yet is spreading out different amounts of chakra to different clones. The more added, the more force that will be needed to dispel it. Also, when you dispel a clone by choice, the remaining chakra the clone has will return to you and replenish your supplies. It won't be as much, as some will have been used, however it will still make a difference. Single quote. I've got to go now. Mess around with the cage bunshin, and not in that way, and keep going with your other training. I'll see you soon. And before Naruto had a chance to say anything, her voice was gone. And Naruto's mind was once again silent. Not sure what would happen, he thought a thank you to the demon, then set about exploring the cage bunshin. Over the next few days Naruto didn't fight with his clones in the morning as he did for the last week. Instead, he would summon them the moment he woke up, and then for the rest of the day they'd split up and work on chakra control and the chakra string technique. The real Naruto spent his time doing extra physical work. He started speed work, and more work on expanding his chakra reserves. At the end of the day, he will remember to dispel the clones with a 10 minutes gap between each one, and despite him still getting a headache, Naruto never had any trouble sleeping due to the fatigue that constantly gripped his body. On the 9th day, Naruto woke up at around 7 in the morning as usual, and immediately he could sense something was wrong. He remembered the techniques he'd been learning the day before, sensing other people's chakra. Now he was pretty sure he could sense someone nearby. He wondered how long they'd been there for, whether they'd just arrived, or he had only recently been able to sense them. There were two sources, as far as he could make out, going off at about 90 degrees to each other into the forest. Naruto climbed to his feet quietly, and crept into the forest towards the person he thought was closest. And found them a few minutes later. He wore a Konoha headband, and a black cloth, covering most of his face, leaving only his glasses-covered eyes visible to the watching Naruto. Come out already, I can hear you. The ninja said, silently drawing a kunai from a pouch at his side. Naruto shrugged and jumped down from the tree. He already knew his hiding place would be discovered eventually. You're the Kyuubi brat. The ninja muttered in shock, then smirked behind his face mask. My master will be pleased when I bring your tied-up body to him. Who's your master? Naruto asked. This fellow wasn't acting like your average Konoha nin. The mighty snake Sannin himself, Orochimaru. Now to make things easy, and stop you from getting spoiled too much, come over here. And I promise not to hurt you too much. Naruto ignored the guy, quickly making 5 kage bunshin and sending them into the forest to hide while he was talking. Without answering, he jumped forward, and sent a kick for the man's side. It was easily dodged, but the kunai to the heart from one of the shadow clones from behind wasn't. He quickly dispelled the blood-covered clone, and looked down at the ninja in disgust. He'd heard rumors about the snake traitor, and had no remorse about killing one of his supporters. He was just reaching his hand into the pockets on the man's jacket looking or anything that would identify the ninja, when he felt something hard close around his hand. He tried to pull away, but found it stuck between 2 smooth solid objects. Like my technique, it allows me to move my joints out of their normal positions. I can literally move any part of my body anywhere. He was still lying on the floor, but rolled onto his back, yanking Naruto's hand painfully in the process. I used my rib cage to move my heart out of the way of your attack just in time to avoid major damage. You caught me off guard last time, but this time you don't stand a chance. Naruto merely smiled, stabbed into the man with another kunai, around the spot where his hand was trapped. Feeling it come free, he leapt back, putting some space between the 2 opponents. Immediately locking his hands together in the predictable hand seal, he created 4 kage bunshin, and sent them at the spy. The first ran at the man, dodging past a fist, and aimed a punch for the side of his head. His and was caught by a hideously disfigured shoulder joint, intercepting the punch. Not giving the clone a chance to move, he landed a fist in its stomach. The second came from behind, forcing the man to spin round and trade a few blows before it too was dispelled. The last 2 jumped in, one on either side, and started to attack. One of them managed to graze the side of his head with an elbow, but it seemed the man was having little problems fending off their attacks. Sensing this, one drew back, and threw 3 shuriken at him. The unidentified ninja jumped up into the air, easily avoiding the projectiles, and pulled a scroll from his back, before smeared from blood on it. The scroll unraveled, and sent a huge wave of weapons at the 2 clones, easily dispelling them, then turning to the real Naruto. The ninja smirked when about 5 of the weapons hit the blonde, causing him to stagger backwards and collapse to the ground. We've been watching your training. You may try hard, but you have no talent. I can understand Orochimaru wanting the Uchiha, but I don't know why he wants someone as worthless. He stopped, and looked down at his chest to see 5 kunai sticking out of him. What have you done? I had 5 shadow clones there all alone. Naruto grinned, standing up from his position on the ground, unharmed. I would have noticed them. How are you not hurt? The man asked, collapsing onto his knees in pain. I wanted to test out a genjutsu on you. I may not be able to do them myself, however she can. Naruto motioned to one side where the puppet stood in the shadows, the outlines of chakra strings connecting the 2. Looks like it was successful, and all that hard work wasn't for nothing. What's happening? Naruto asked fearfully as he felt a cold hand touch the back of his head. And he felt some of his chakra slowly leave his body. You've killed my teammate, thanks. It just means I don't have to share the reward money when I get back with you in the IHA, and Lord Orochimaru will be even more pleased with me. Now let me introduce you to my chakra stealing technique. Naruto cursed, and tried to turn round. But the ninja now had one hand round his neck in a headlock, and the other holding a kunai to his back. Don't move, and you'll live. I won't take enough to kill you, just leave you unconscious, so don't struggle. The man hissed in his ear. Naruto groaned to himself. He'd used a lot of chakra taking down the other guy, and even if he escaped now, he wouldn't have enough to challenge this one. First things first though, how was he going to get away? Using his diminishing reserves, Naruto pushed as much as he could out of his chakra release points on his back. He twisted round to punch the ninja in the face. And as he suspected, he didn't wait, and went to stab him in the back. However, the kunai was stopped inches from his skin by the blue wall of chakra he had built up. He quickly bit down on the nin's arm, his elongated canines sinking into the arm. Naruto felt the grip around his throat loosen slightly, and he was able to slip out of the choke hold and jump back a few meters. I wasn't expecting that, but I've already taken too much for you to be able to fight me. Naruto could see he was right, but chose to try and delay so he could come up with a plan. What does Orochimaru want me for? You'll find out soon enough. The man growled, and continued walking forward towards Naruto. What? You don't know? What sort of useless spy are you? Such an arrogant little boy. Lord Orochimaru doesn't want you, he wants what's in your belly. Naruto wasn't listening to the spy though, instead he was listening to a different voice. Let him touch you again. But, just do it. Alright, I want to meet this lord guy, maybe we can come to some sort of agreement. The spy didn't believe his ears, and looked at Naruto like he was crazy. You what? I want you to take me to Orochimaru. It shouldn't be that difficult to understand. Naruto said again impatiently. Okay, drop your weapons and come over here then. Naruto did as he asked, and felt the man touch his skin again. And his chakra began to leave him again, however this time it felt a bit different, like it didn't want to leave. Suddenly the man fell to the floor. His eyes turned red, and he started to trash around wildly. Red sparks flying off his body, before after a little while he slowed down and stopped, laying still on the ground. What did you do to him? Naruto asking incredulously. Fed him some of my chakra. Kyuubi panted. This is what would have happened if the fourth hadn't sealed me in a newborn baby like you. You've grown up with my chakra, so you can stand it, and control some, however to everyone else, it's poison. Cool, thanks for saving me. That's alright, I guess I owe it to you. Forcing that chakra into your system has knackered me, it's going to take a while for me to get partially thought the seal anytime soon, so you'll be on your own. Okay, have a good time. Yeah, something like that. She muttered, so Naruto could only just hear. Remember to train, and I'll give you some interesting stuff when we next see each other. I think it's time for you to leave Konoha soon. That was only 2 people, there will probably be another member somewhere, so watch out. Good luck. And with that she was gone. Naruto frowned, and gradually got up looking around him. Weapons littered the ground, with a lot of blood surrounding the 2 dead bodies. Naruto quickly checked their pulse to make sure. Then collected any decent-looking weapons, sealed them in a scroll, and made his way back to the temporary base he had set up for himself. Naruto made it back to his apartment, and started planning for the next day. He'd sealed anything of value in scrolls, and left them in a hiding place a few miles out of Konoha. He was going to head in the general direction of Wave C. Ountry however ever since he and his team had saved Wave, the country always went to Konoha to get its missions, so the place would be crawling with Konoha shinobi. There were however lots of small Asians without a shinobi village in that area, so he wouldn't have to worry too much about where he was going, more of how he was going to get there, and what he was going to do when he left. He'd IDED that since he wouldn't have another sensei apart from Kyuubi who didn't know many human techniques, he would have to borrow a few things before he went. Naruto hadn't had time to look at any art techniques on the secret scroll before Mizuki had found him, however he had flipped though, and thought at the tome some of them looked interesting. That would be a good place to start, however there were only a maximum of 20 techniques on that scroll. He debated for a minute or two. If he stole the scroll, then he'd become a missing nin. In fact if he left anyhow, he'd still become a missing nin, whichever way you looked at it. He was still an active member of the Konoha shinobi force. Danzu, come in quickly, or Sarutobi will be onto us. A black door in a back alley opened, and the man was quickly ushered inside before the door slammed shut. Of course, Counselor Sama, I trust everything went as planned. When I met the old man a few hours ago he looked quite unhappy about something. Of course. But as you said there was nothing he could do. The Kyuubi brat isn't going anywhere, and we've got him angry enough. Honoma said looking at the bandage-wrapped man, only illuminated B. Why the lone candle burning in the small room? The person we were looking for is coming tomorrow, we can lay the trap then. He says it will be possible, but the transition must be complete up to 2 tails before we do anything. Sigh. Keep a close eye on the target, we don't want him slipping off. The two elders gasped as the slender boy appeared from the dark, brushed past them, and left through the door they came in through. Are you sure he won't give us away? Koharu asked nervously, glancing back at Danzu to see him grinning smugly. My men are emotionless, they live to serve me, and my plans. The old fool was wise to break up my division, however he could never truly stomp us out. Sai is my #1 servant. He's young so no one suspects him. He was recently keeping an eye on the Uchiha before he left. On that subject, I have a root team following him. When do you think you'll be ready? We're looking for willing volunteers to bear his children currently. A few decided to start blabbing though, so we had to kill them. And pause for a few weeks to stop the Hokage becoming suspicious, but I'd say we'll have 10 by the end of next week. Koharu said, smiling at the prospect of having Konoha's most famous clan be restored. Excellent. How is Kakashi and his team doing? Konohamaru will be having some more private lessons with Ebisu, to make sure he doesn't become too much like Sarutobi. Naruto woke the next day. And after a few morning exercises, a shower and breakfast, he made his way to the Hokage office. Old man. Hello Naruto, how have you been getting on? The Hokage sat slumped at his desk. And didn't even bother to look up when Naruto entered. Tough day Gg. People used to respect the position of Hokage. First the Fire Lord, and the counselors order me to stop you becoming a proper shinobi. Now if we catch Sasuke, he's going to have to sleep with 10 fangirls of his to revive the clan. The old man sighed, and absently span his Hokage hat in his hand. Naruto couldn't help let out a giggle. Poor guy, let's hope he doesn't get caught. For once, I'm going to have to agree with you. This village has done nothing but worship him ever since the massacre. I don't really blame him wanting to get away from it all. You and him, two very different ends of the spectrum, yet you became friends. What? How do you know that? The Hokage looked guilty as Naruto stared at him. The crystal ball, I was checking up on you. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell anyone. What's this ball? The Hokage smiled, and began telling the blonde before him. Gigi. These nasty men came and tried to get me, I couldn't get away, and they kicked me into a wall, then everything went black, and I woke up in a dustbin. The old man looked at the 4-year-old Naruto who was covered in cuts and bruises. Seeing nothing serious, the Hokage quickly healed most of them. Why did they all hate me? Naruto asked in such a small pitiful voice the Hokage nearly started crying. He wanted to tell the little boy. But he knew Naruto would be much worse off if he knew he had a giant demon sealed in his stomach. Maybe he could distract him. Come and sit on my new Naruto. And I'll show you a very special item the Hokage gets. He pulled out the crystal ball, and began to show Naruto around Konoha from above, looking in on a Jonin training session in a few of the classrooms in the academy. He made sure to keep away from his usual haunts, hot springs. He knew if he turned Naruto into a pervert, somehow Minato would come back from the grave and haunt him for the rest of his life. The Hokage ignored the mountain-high pile of paperwork sitting on his desk, and spent the rest of the day with Naruto. The Hokage snapped out of it, and looked at Naruto standing before him. I didn't mention the bit about the hot springs, did I? He suddenly asked, looking panicky. No, but I'm starting to piece a few things together. Naruto grinned at the horrified look on the face of the village leader. Yes, well, what did you want, Naruto? The Hokage asked briskly, trying to hide his blush. I want to retire. Being a shinobi is nothing if I can't get promoted. I won't be able to become Hokage. Or become an Anbu, and I won't get recognized, so there's nothing left for me. I'm so sorry, Naruto. To be blunt though, retiring isn't that easy. People saw a way round the system a long time ago. And when they wanted to leave for another village they simply retired, and joined another village. You won't be retiring from just this village, but from every shinobi village there are in the known world. When you retire you can never go back, you'll be stuck as a citizen or mercenary, or whatever for the rest of your life. Don't expect people to employ you either. Mercenaries don't get a lot of respect from missing nins, or from bounty collectors either. What do you mean? Naruto asked, confused that people who had betrayed their village would reject people who'd run away. People who leave normally from a village are often spies trying to catch missing nins off guard. Their names won't appear in the bingo book, so nobody knows if their story's true or not. Also they're viewed as cowards. who aren't strong enough to take on the hunter nins. So I should run away. Do what you must, Naruto, but be careful, the elders are planning something, and Dan's. You left the country for a few weeks recently. He's back now, so you should be extra careful. One last thing, Gigi, just for the record, seeing as I rescued it from being stolen, where is the secret scroll being kept? The Hokage smirked, looked around him conspiratorially, and whispered. I'm afraid I can't tell Genin that all the secret scrolls are found in this office behind that picture over there. And that all it takes is a drop of my blood and a key to open. Naruto grinned slyly. Shame, I'd just like to know that Konoha's secrets are safe. I hope you keep the key safe. Of course, I usually sleep with it on. However, sometimes when I'm really forgetful I leave it in the top drawer, along with my lucky kunai, that I accidentally stabbed myself with this morning. Excellent. I feel soft. In the knowledge that no evil people can steal Konoha's secrets. Naruto smiled at the Hokage and got up to leave. Naruto, before you go. The blonde turned around and looked at the old man, who was looking slightly worried. You may find some facts that have been hidden from you in there. It was not my intention to keep them from you, I promised not to. Naruto simply nodded. Good luck, Naruto, and know that Konoha will be a lesser, much more boring place without you. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.